just give a very high level summary of the Arizona Food Bank Network, why we're involved in this work, and sort of food insecurity in Arizona overall and how SNAP helps address that. And then our partner, Mary Guzman with the Department of Economic Security, will talk to you in much more detail about SNAP and how it works and how you can access it as a college student, and as well as how you can apply for it. We'll answer questions. And then at the end, I'll talk a little bit about the EATS Act, which is a bill that's moving through Congress that would make these changes or make college students permanently eligible for SNAP. Actually, before I do that, I just want to thank and applaud my colleague, Alexander Meyer, our community programs manager, for not only putting this webinar together, but for the years of work that he's put into this issue of college hunger and making sure that folks are aware of it and how we can eliminate it. So if you don't know Alexander already, you certainly will at some point. So our network is a coalition of large food banks that work collectively with 1,000 partner agencies to get millions of pounds of food to folks struggling with food insecurity throughout the state. Just for scale, last year we distributed about 220 million pounds of food. And for those of you that don't measure your food in pounds, that's about 170 million meals. And those small agencies that do the direct work are community centers, homeless shelters, and food pantries. And I know there are probably a lot of folks that have experienced food pantries on college campuses on the call, and we're really grateful for the work that they do. But excuse me, in addition to providing emergency food relief or helping our food banks to do that, we look for long-term solutions to hunger, which involves public policy and expanding access to federal nutrition programs like SNAP and school meals. So this slide just gives a brief, a quick glimpse of food insecurity in Arizona overall. It's hard to see, but the lighter colored bars are from 2019 and the darker ones are from 2020. All this data comes from our national partners, Feeding America. And so, again, just for scale, collectively, our network was serving about 460,000 people each month prior to the pandemic, but we knew that twice as many were really struggling with food insecurity. So as many of you know, that sort of means living paycheck to paycheck. And if you miss one paycheck, it's impossible to put food on the table for yourself and your family. And when the pandemic hit, we saw that data really kind of play out in real time. So we know that this year about 1.4 million Arizonans are struggling with hunger, many of them for the first time, and our food banks do incredible work and work tirelessly to meet the need, but we need longer term solutions, and that's where SNAP comes in. And one of the things that's not on this graph is that prior to the pandemic, about 39% of college students across the country were struggling with food insecurity. So if you look at our hardest hit counties, Apache and Navajo on the left, 39% is still drastically higher than what they were seeing. And then just a quick, this is a terrible pun, but snapshot of what SNAP looks like in Arizona. So the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, formerly food stamps. Mary's going to talk a lot more detail about that program, but I think it's just important to know that the average benefit per person per meal here in Arizona is $1.70. So it's not, it's not a lot. And even prior to the pandemic, that number was $1.18 per person per meal. So we know that it's supplemental, it's supplementing income, and we'd love to see that value reevaluated at the national level. And I think two other points I'll just highlight are that 2/3 of the folks that participate in SNAP in Arizona are either kids, seniors, or people living with disabilities. But of the adults who do participate, we know that 2 out of 3 of them are working. And I'm sure many of you are aware of that as well, working 1 or 2 jobs, just struggling to make ends meet. And that's where SNAP comes in. So if you want more information on any of that, there's a link at the bottom, and I can put that in the chat to our anti-hunger playbook. But I'm now going to turn it over to my partner, At DES, Mary Guzman, she's the head, she works with the DES Family Assistance Administration, and she's been with the agency since 1997. She oversees their policy and legislative teams, and she answers all of my questions, which are, I have quite a few. So I'll turn it over to you, Mary.
Thank you, Ashley. Good afternoon, everyone. Happy to be here to do this presentation on the new student exemptions for the SNAP program. As we all know, and we just heard, college students are a significantly underserved population when it comes to the SNAP program. And we also would like to see changes on the federal level in that as well. So we're looking forward to that. So I'm going to go ahead and present some slides here. And as we go through, Ashley, I don't know if you want to save or they can put any questions they have in the chat, and then we can save them for the Q&A at the end. Otherwise, I just need somebody to kind of prompt me if there's a question that comes up. So the first question is obviously, what is SNAP? So SNAP is a Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, formerly known as food stamps. It provides supplemental food assistance to eligible households. And that assistance is in the form of an electronic benefits transfer, or an EBT card, which works much like a debit card to purchase food at both at participating retailers. And those are both brick and mortar stores and online. So most grocery stores and convenience stores participate in the SNAP point of purchase program. And currently in Arizona, we do have an agreement with 3 grocers to do online purchasing, and that is Aldi, Walmart, and Amazon. So the eligibility for the SNAP program is based on various eligibility factors, including but not limited to, these are just a few that we get questions on most often, and that is household composition. Household composition is basically who lives with you, what is their relationship to you, and who do you normally buy and cook your food together with. So an example of that would be like a roommate example situation. So we're looking at mandatory household members when we ask this question. So spouses have to be included with each other. Children who are under the age of 22 and live with their parents, the children and parents have to be included on the same SNAP case. And those who buy and cook their food together have to be on the same SNAP case. So in a roommate situation where the relationship between the roommates is not a spouse or a parent to child relationship, we're really looking at, do you buy and cook your food together? And if the answer to that is yes, then again, we're looking at needing to be included on the same SNAP case. If the answer to that is no, that the roommates normally buy and cook their food completely separate, then we would not be looking at them as part of that household composition. Another thing, one of the various eligibility factors is the income test. How much countable earned and unearned income do all household members have? And that term countable is really defined by our policy. Every type of income has a policy to go with it. And it's various different ways of looking at different income. Some income is completely not countable whatsoever, and some is. So at the end of that calculation is the total gross income for the household under the maximum allowable for that household size. That is one of the eligibility factors that we get asked about quite often, is the income guidelines. So the SNAP college student policy, under normal circumstances, a student who is enrolled at least half time in an institution of higher education must meet a student exemption in order to participate in the SNAP program. And there are quite a few existing student exemptions that we had before these new changes. One is if a student is employed and paid for at least 80 hours in a 30-day period. If a student is actively participating in a state or federal work-study program, and the key word there being participating, and you'll find out when we talk about the new exemptions why that's important, was a student placed in the institution through various work programs such as our jobs, the WIOA, our SNAP employment and training, tribal employment and training, etc. Is the student under age 18 or over 49, in receipt of cash assistance, unfit to work due to a temporary or permanent disability, responsible for the care of a dependent child, and there's some additional child age and household requirements for that exemption. So these student exemptions already exist. And if a student meets one of these, then they are potentially eligible to participate in the SNAP program. So now we have some new college student exemptions that we want to talk about today. So the Consolidated Appropriations Act of 2021, or House Resolution 133, allows for 2 additional temporary college student exemptions that participants may meet in order to qualify for SNAP benefits. To meet these new exemptions, the student must either in the current academic year have an expected family contribution, or an EFC, of 0, or is eligible to participate in a state or federally financed work-study program during the regular school year as determined by the school. Now, the difference between this work-study exemption and the one we just talked about is that in order to meet this new exemption, the student need not actually participate in the work-study program. They only need to be eligible to participate. So these additional exemptions were implemented on January 14th, 2021, and are in effect until the first recertification of the SNAP case that occurs 30 days or more after the COVID-19 public health emergency is lifted. So the duration of these exemptions is very important. Most SNAP households are approved for at least a 12-month certification period. Households are required to submit a renewal application and complete an interview prior to the last month of their certification period in order to continue benefits into that 13th month and beyond. So in this particular case, an example of a student who may meet one of these new exemptions and how long they can meet that exemption would be if a student applies, say, in May of 2021 and is approved for the months of May through April of 2022. So April 2022 is when the student would need to reapply for benefits. And for this example, let's say the public health emergency is lifted on December 31st of 2021. That would be more than 30 days prior to the date of the renewal. So upon renewal, to redetermine benefits for May is something that they would need to, at that point, unless extended or put into, codified into federal regulation, we would have to look at either meeting another exemption or some other criteria to be eligible. There are some verification requirements of the new student exemptions. So for the EFC of 0, what we have trained our staff on is to look for the FAFSA student aid report. So this would be information that the student or the applicant would need to provide to DES. And if we can see on that there is an EFC of 0, then obviously that student meets one of the new criteria or the new exemptions. If not, then we will be looking to see if they are eligible to participate in a state or federally financed work-study program, which can be verified via a financial award letter, as you can see here, as long as there is an award for the ability to participate. That would also meet that secondary portion of the new student exemption. And remember, for that, it's, again, you don't need to participate, it's just being eligible to participate. For both of the student exemptions, you can also provide verification of hard copy verification or documentation rather from the school, or DES, we can complete a collateral contact with the school's financial aid department. A collateral contact is phone contact with the school. However, based on some of the school's release of information regulations, they may or may not release information to DES over the phone. They may require you to be on the line to give a release of information. Some schools may just not be willing to do that as part of their practice. Screen prints of information that you have available in an online format, you can also use that information, but it must include identifying information that confirms it belongs to the student in question. So in other words, if you're going to do a screen print from your, call it your student portal, and it shows that the information needed to meet those exemptions, we would need to be able to see that your name and some other piece of identifying information is on there, your name, your date of birth, your social, some information to identify that information belongs to that student. If you do not have verification readily available, you should still apply as soon as possible. The worker will attempt to verify the information during the interview, or will send you an information request for verification to be provided within 10 days. So please do not hold off on applying if you meet these new exemption criteria. Do not hold off on applying if it's just a verification issue for you. We can go ahead and get the application started, get the interview going, and then we can assist as well to complete, to facilitate the verification. Now, some students may already be on a SNAP case as a disqualified student because they did not meet one of those previously existing student exemptions. And if this is the case for you, you're already on a SNAP case, but you now meet one of these new temporary exemptions, you need only to make contact with DES to report the change to the existing case. At the time you report the change, the worker will attempt to verify the information and or will send you, again, an information request in the mail informing you of what information or verification is needed and allowing 10 days to provide. So if you feel that you meet one of these new criteria, again, we would love to see you apply and see if we can't assist you with the SNAP benefits. To apply for SNAP, you can either submit an application online at healthyarizonaplus.gov, or you can apply over the phone by contacting our Customer Service Support Center at 855-HEA+, or that's 855-432-7587. Once again, once an application is received for SNAP, a phone interview is required, and possible additional verification may be needed before DES can make a determination on your case. If you fall into that category where you really just need to report a change, that now you do meet one of these temporary student exemptions, then you would again want to contact our Customer Support Center at the number above and indicate which of the new student exemptions that you meet. An interview is not required to report a change, and they'll again assist you with any verification they might need. Now, one thing to note, this presentation here we've been talking about has been strictly about the student eligibility criteria, and as stated in the beginning, there are multiple eligibility factors for the SNAP program. So just want to make it very clear that all other SNAP eligibility requirements must be met before we could look at approving for benefits. So again, the best thing to do is, if you meet the student criteria, is to apply, and we'll step you through the process and assist you in any way that we can. And that's really the overview of the new student exemptions. Ashley, did you want to?
Yeah.
I'll hand it back over to you.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you so much, Mary. I think that was really clear. We do have a lot of questions, so that's also very exciting. So I think I'll start with the ones in the chat, and then I have a list here of folks, of questions people submitted in advance. So we'll see what we can get through. So first question is, are grad students included in this?
I'm sorry, I
Sorry.
didn't catch.
Are graduate students eligible in addition to undergraduate students?
Yes. So to be considered a student and needing to have to meet this secondary level of a student exemption, as long as you're enrolled in an institution of higher learning, which is your colleges, your universities, technical schools, trade schools, you're enrolled at least half-time or more, then we look at now you need to meet a student exemption in order to participate. So yes, both are included in that.
Perfect. Another question is, what if I go to college in Arizona, but I live out of state right now? Can I still qualify? And would I apply to SNAP in Arizona or the current state that I'm living in?
So that is a good question. So Arizona residency is required for the SNAP program. It really depends on what are your living situations. So have you created a permanent residence here, and the fact that you have a home or a lease of some sort versus transit living? There's a lot of extra information that we would need on your residency status and intent or non-intent to remain in Arizona. So the best thing to do in that case, if you meet one of these exemptions, is to apply. And during that contact, that's one of the first questions we'll be talking about. We can get all that information and be able to better answer your question.
Apply to Arizona or the current state?
You can apply, anybody can apply. You can apply in Arizona, and then they'll evaluate your, again, your Arizona residency intent and how you've set up your living arrangements here. And if for some reason you don't meet the requirements for Arizona, then they'll notify you at that point, and you can always go back to the state that you hold residency in or plan to return to, and have those conversations with that state.
Oh, so if it's non-Arizona resident, then just apply to your state.
Yes, but I don't want to make that blanket statement. There's some very specific criteria that have to be met. So without knowing that about your particular situation, I'm very hesitant to give you a blanket no, you wouldn't be eligible. So again, the best thing to do would be to make contact. And even if you didn't want to apply, you can call our customer service support center and ask that question. Provide them with your detailed information on your circumstances, and then they can give you a better idea about whether or not you would qualify in Arizona.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, and so also if I'm asking your question and I'm not quite getting the nuance, please jump in. Feel free to unmute yourself and ask directly. But the next one I'm seeing is if I work during the summer and then I quit my job when school starts, and then I apply for SNAP, will I be eligible for full benefits, or sort of what should folks do in that situation? When should they apply?
So again, you can apply at any time. When we talk about multiple eligibility factors, one of the other eligibility factors we have are the nutrition assistance or the SNAP work requirements. So when it comes to having employment and then voluntarily terminating that employment, there's again some specifics about that specific scenario that we would need to know. There is an overarching, it's called a voluntary quit policy, that under normal circumstances, if you were working at least 30 hours a week at minimum wage and you voluntarily terminated your employment, you have to meet certain good cause criteria in order to be eligible. But again, it's one of those I really wouldn't be able to answer specifically because it is so case by case. Best thing to do is to make contact, and we'll talk about your specific situation.
Great. Is there a place where folks can go to see the income cutoffs? So, yeah, let's start there. It's a two-part question.
Yes. So all of the information surrounding the SNAP program is available to the public. I didn't come prepared with it, but before the end of this, let me see if I can't find a link to provide you that information. It can be found on the USDA website, so that's usda.gov, and I think it's into the FNS, the Food and Nutrition Services. They should have the totals on there, or the income limits rather, per household size. And then we also have it here in Arizona in our public front-facing policy manual. So I'll see if I can't get the link to the policy manual real quick and put that in the chat for everyone.
Great, and I can also do that. So the next part of that question is, if someone's parents or family are already, I think you might have addressed this, but maybe more clarification, are already receiving SNAP or participating in SNAP, is their household benefit going to be affected by a student applying as well?
So that has two ways of looking at it. So parents and children, when the child is under age 22 and living with the parents, we cannot separate those children from the parents. They would have to be on the same SNAP case. So I'm going to give a couple examples because I don't know the case specifics on here. If this particular case, the child is under 22 and is just not on the case because they didn't meet the already existing student criteria, it would be one of those situations where you would want to call and report the change, and they can add you back into your parent's case. If the student in question is over the age of 22, even if they do live with their parents, at that point, the child and parent relationship does not make them mandatory to be on the same case. Now we're looking at, do you eat, buy and cook or eat your food together with your parents? If the answer to that is yes, then yes, we would want to add you onto your parent's case. If the answer to that is no, you're over 22, you're very independent, you do your own thing, then there should be no reason why you can't have your own case apart from your parents.
Hi, Isolde, I think this is your question, and if you want to just jump in, because I might have totally misrepresented what you were asking.
No, you're good. I just wanted to clarify. So if, like, specifically in my case, I'm moving like on campus, and technically like that's not living with your parents anymore, and I'll be buying and cooking my own food, but I am 19 years old. So will it, like, what do you think in this case, would it affect, because my grandma gets snaps and that's like including the whole family. So I wouldn't want to like lower her snaps like for me, you know?
So that's a great question as well. So normally, if you're only living temporarily away from home because of school or work, then they would still consider you as one household, even though you're living on campus. But to that point, adding a participant to a SNAP case wouldn't necessarily lower benefits. It usually will raise benefits unless there's some income that would offset. So if you're a full-time student and you're either not working and or you're participating in work study, which is not countable, then it would probably have the net effect of potentially raising the benefit level for your household. Again, it's a little in that case specific scenario, so I'm a little hesitant to do eligibility on the spot. I would just refer you to the state agency and ask those specific questions.
One more like quick caveat. So I asked the same question about working because I just got a job, and like I only plan on working for like the next like couple months, like 2 or 3 months. So that being said, would I be eligible? Because you kind of discussed it before, but I was kind of confused.
Right. So employment in and of itself it does not cause ineligibility for the SNAP program. So when we look at eligibility, we look at how many household members are there that are able to participate. And then we look at what is the cumulative income for the household. and some income may not be countable. So I don't know specifically what the situation is, but, and then we go on to look at what are the expenses to offset that income. So I just want to make sure you're aware that being employed alone is not indicative of any ineligibility for the program. Again, the best thing to do is to make contact, and they can go over your very specific information. Now, if you, these student exemptions are in effect until the public health emergency is lifted. So whether you choose to take advantage of it today or you choose to take advantage of it, 2 months from now, as long as the public health emergency is in effect, then we can look at potentially, SNAP benefits for you.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So I think, let's see. There's a question about Cochise County specific, and I think we also have one of our SNAP outreach partners on the call. So let me ask you this, Marianne, maybe if you're not able to answer, Brooke can, but she's asking, is there a point of contact in Cochise County that I could reach out to if I wanted to arrange for a SNAP representative or a sister to come visit our community college in the fall?
That's a great question. I would have to get back with you, but I thought Brooke was on the phone, and I don't know. Yeah.
Covers Cochise, I believe. But I'm not sure how they're operating right now because they've had some impacts due to COVID. But I could definitely reach out to them and talk to them about it. Otherwise, I'm trying to think of another, because there are so many more HIA sister agencies than SNAP-O agencies, and there may be a good set of agencies that I am not aware of, and I have a point of contact that in the past I've tried to reach out to through Access to ask a similar question, and I just know she's really busy. I can try to ask that question again to her too, specific to Cochise, and see what agency partners are HIA Plus in that area.
Yeah, that would be great. I think that you named an agency at the very beginning, and I didn't hear who you said it was in Cochise County.
CCAP.
CCAP.
They're, but again, I don't know how many staff they have at that location. They were impacted with COVID, where they had a couple of staff deaths too, unfortunately. So I'm not sure how they're currently operating either, especially with service delivery. But I can reach out to them too and ask. So they would also probably know if they don't have the resources to do it right now.
Okay. That would be great. We have everybody's email address, I think, so we can respond to you directly. For anybody, we're speaking in code and acronyms, and I apologize for that. So Brooke works with a partner organization called Wildfire, and they do a lot of different things, but one of them is to help folks walk through the SNAP application process, because it can be kind of confusing if they're not able to work with DES directly. So we will circle back with you. Marguerite, I think you're the person who asked that question, so we'll get back to you for sure. And then I think, David, if you want to unmute yourself and ask a question, please feel free.
Yep. Hello. Could you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Yes. Well, I'm a college student at the Arizona Central College. And so I've been staying last year, I was staying at the dorms. And since this COVID happened, everybody had to leave the dorms. So that left me the choice to, stay with friends at the moment. So I did, I am going to go back, but for the moment right now, I'm staying with friends. I did apply about like 2 weeks ago, I believe. I did the online, well, I called them and I did a interview and also did the application online. And, they asked me a question if, I get my own food. I do get my own food. I do pay for all that separately. but it got denied because I guess I didn't give him the work study, or I think it was a FAFSA student aid report. And so I go, like, I think 2 days later, I go in and I email FAFSA, and they did send me a letter, and it was just yeah, it was just a work study. And so I went back and called them, the DS, and they said that I couldn't be approved just because I did not work, and I have to at least have 20 hours a week in order for me to be eligible for that. And well, and this was actually my third time calling them. And so they said, that representative, she said, well, there is one other thing that we could see is if we have to see your financial aid report. And that's where I kind of left it at, because I was like, well, I guess I don't know, I guess I'm not eligible for it. But yeah, sorry, this is the reason I wanted to ask the question, not type it, because it was kind of long. So sorry.
Well, I do apologize, David. So if I'm understanding you correctly, you applied, they requested some verification, and then there was a denial. Now, going back to the conversation about the 20 hours per week, unfortunately, that I can tell from the way that's worded, it's a reference to the already existing work study policy. It doesn't look like the person that you were talking to, unfortunately, and I apologize for that, was applying these new student exemptions. So as long as you have that either 0 EFC showing and or on your financial aid is showing that you're eligible for work study, if you're not participating in work study, that's perfectly fine. Then you should be okay from a student standpoint. Again, without seeing, if they denied you for failing to provide something, that denial letter should show exactly what it was that they needed. But if we could do this, because David, I want to make sure that you don't have to jump through hoops here. I don't know if you can, Ashley, if you can put my email address in the chat, or maybe I'll just put my email address. And if you want to email me with your name, date of birth, and your case number, I can definitely have somebody look into that for you.
That would be great. Thank you very much. Thank you. Like I said, it's I've been calling it like 3 times, and I kind of don't really know much about it, but that would be amazing if you do. Thank you.
Perfect.
Like I said, Mary has all the answers. If we could clone her, that would make everybody's life easier. There's one question actually I overlooked, and I apologize. That someone's asking, a student could be eligible for a federal work study award, but not actually be awarded. So does the student have to actually be awarded a federal work study to meet the criteria?
No, so it should still show on your financial aid whether you're awarded and or eligible for. So, and I might have my terminology mixed up. I don't work for the school. I just know what we can see. So as long as your financial aid says you are eligible, there's no requirement for you to actually be participating. And that may be a situation where it would be best to have the worker talk to somebody at your financial aid department, so we can maybe talk out what the intricacies of that situation are. I've never heard a concern about that before, so I'm very interested in what the answer is. But
I think, the person who asked this question, Melva, if you want to jump in, please correct me if I'm wrong. But what I'm hearing is that, so we know that folks don't have to be participating in the work study, right, because of the current pandemic situation, but that there's a limited number of those federal work study awards that go out. So students could be eligible for them, but actually not be awarded. Does that make a little more sense? And please, Melva, jump in if I'm misrepresenting your question.
That sounds very logical at this point, if that's what we're talking about, just not having the bandwidth to accommodate, but still being eligible for.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right, thanks. So one question I have is, if a student is not a citizen or a green card holder, would they be eligible for SNAP?
So for SNAP, comes to citizenship, well, let me take it from the flip side of the coin. When it comes to non-citizenship, you have to have valid USCIS documents, either a lawful permanent resident card, some other form. We've got a whole list of authorized non-citizen documents that are still potentially eligible for SNAP. If you have no documentation whatsoever, and or unfortunately, if you are, if your status is that of DACA, you would not qualify for the SNAP program at this time. It's unfortunate, but the DACA really is an indication of no status but deferred deportation, so it would not meet our SNAP eligibility factor for citizenship or non-citizenship.
Okay. So let's see. Let's see if some of these questions were already answered. Does it matter if a student is, I think you covered this, but does it matter if a student is dependent or independent on their parents' taxes? And how would that impact a student's eligibility?
So unlike the state's Medicaid or the Access program, taxpayer filing units is really not something that the SNAP program looks at. We really are looking at that household composition, which is who do you live with? What is the relationship? Meaning, are there any folks that need to be mandatorily included, like spouse to spouse, parent to child under 22? And who do you purchase and prepare your food with or buy and cook your food with? Tax filing really is not part of the eligibility process for SNAP.
Perfect. I think so. If a student meets these exemptions, or there are many answers to this question, so I'm trying to figure out how to say it. Why would they otherwise be denied for SNAP? So I think it might be a little bit confusing when we say that, you know, if you meet these exemptions, you should apply. I think maybe there are a whole range of other reasons why folks might not be eligible, and that's why we're encouraging them to apply. But could you maybe, yeah, thanks.
Yeah, so I took a look at that one. So because there are all of those various eligibility factors around the SNAP program, and today we're focusing on the student criteria. Bottom line is, if you meet the student criteria, that is an indication that you're potentially eligible to participate. But we have many other eligibility factors, again, such as citizenship being one, residency, work requirements, going back to that voluntary termination question. So it could be that although you meet the student criteria, there may be another eligibility factor that's not met. That might cause you to be denied for the SNAP program. Another situation would be, just as David had mentioned earlier, it really wasn't what we call a hard decision, meaning that we've determined ineligibility. If you're requested to provide verification, for some reason the agency doesn't get what they need or what they had requested, they may deny your case simply for failing to provide something. That's what we call a soft determination. It's not a determination that you're completely ineligible for the program. It's an indication that we can't move forward with the eligibility process until we receive more information. On that, keep in mind the SNAP application process, the initial application process, has a 30-day time limit, meaning that from the date you apply to the date a decision has to be made is 30 days. However, if it falls into one of those soft denial categories for a failure to provide, or we didn't get the information, then we can actually relook at your case for the next 30 days and potentially reopen it and redetermine it. So if if it's a hard determination of ineligibility based on some of those other factors, then that might be one of the reasons that, although you meet the student criteria, that the SNAP program, they wouldn't be able to approve the SNAP program for you. But if it is one of those soft reasons for some verification that's needed, please, by all means, make contact. We have up to 60 days from the date that you apply to go back and relook at that case with any missing information and make sure that we can make a solid decision one way or the other.
Great, thank you. And then Jorge has a question. I think he's going to unmute himself and ask directly. If you're able to. Okay.
Okay. So right now, the question I had was, I'm already on my parents' SNAP already. So I was saying, do I have to stay on my parents' SNAP, or?
Great question. So again, going back to that household composition, Jorge, if you are under the age of 22 and you're living with your parents, then yes, you're considered a mandatory household. You have to be included. If you're over 22, but you buy and cook or purchase or prepare your food together with your parents, then yes, you would need to be included. If you're over 22 and you do your own thing and you buy and cook your food separately, then no, you would not need to be included. And then the secondary question that I would have for either you or your parents to find out is, how does the state have you coded on that case? Do they have you coded as disqualified for not meeting a student exemption? And if so, you would just need to report a change that you meet, if you do meet one of these two new exemptions we talked about today, so that they can look at actively adding you to the case. So it is possible to be attached and on somebody's case, but not an active participant. So you'll want to find out what is your status on that.
Tell them you are getting benefits with your mom. Tell them that.
Okay, well, because I'm getting benefits with my mother, that's why.
Right. So if the question is, do you have to? Again, if you're under 22 and living together, then yes, you have to be together on the same case. If you're over 22 but eat and buy your food together, then yes, you have to be on the same case. But I would, at this point, if you're on the case but they have you coded as disqualified because you hadn't met the existing student criteria, then you would want to contact DES so that if you meet one of these new exemptions, they can add you back to the case, which should most likely in many cases increase the amount of SNAP benefits that your parents are receiving.
Okay, but if he's on my case now and he's just going to college, do I need to do anything in addition or just leave the case as it is?
I'm going to assume you're simplified reporting. So at the next renewal or contact, you would just need to report that he's a college student, and then they'll go through the process of looking at these exemptions for him.
Thank you.
You don't necessarily need to report the change in the middle of the certification period.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
So I know we only have about 5 minutes left, and we have 2 questions that folks submitted in advance. I want to make sure we get those answered. If there are questions that have gone unanswered about your particular case, you can send those to me, or Mary, would it be okay if we have 2 folks that have specific questions about their case, if they email them to you? Okay.
They can email.
So how long would a student be approved for if they are approved for SNAP, and would they have to renew their application at any time?
Yeah, so like I said earlier, most households for SNAP are going to be on a 12-month certification period. So you're approved and you're told you're approved for the next 12 months. Some households where all household members are either elderly and or disabled and there's no earned income, meaning nobody's actively working or self-employed, they may actually receive a 24-month certification period. Whether it's a 12-month or a 24-month, there is a mid-approval contact requirement. in the middle of the certification period, so on a 12-month cert, at the 6-month mark, and on a 24-month certification period at the 12-month mark, there is a requirement. DES will send you a mid-approval contact request. We actually send 2 requests, and then and on the letter, it's got a series of 6 to 7 questions that you have to answer and return back to DES. And I say 6 to 7 because depending on your household circumstances, there's one question that you may or may not get. If you do not send that back, then closure action will be taken for the month following that midpoint. So if you're a 12-month cert and you get your mid-approval contact request, if you do not respond to that, then in month 7, your case will be closed. And likewise, 24-month cert at 12 months. In order to get the 13th month, you need to make sure you follow that process. But at the end of that, so as long as you do the mid-approval contact and you report those changes, whatever action is necessary to your case based on the changes you report, the agency will act on those. If your case continues to be improved to the end of that certification period, then you will receive a letter in the month prior to the month that your certification ends. And that letter lets you know that it's time to renew. You need to submit a renewal application. And again, that could be online, or you can contact us by phone to do it over the phone. And again, you'll have to do another interview. Every SNAP certification period requires an interview. So, I don't know if that answers your question.
Okay, at least now we know what to do.
I think it does, and we've put our contact information in the chat, so if people have further questions, they can ask that way. And lastly, how can university staff best assist their students?
So the biggest thing here that we ask is that we get the word out, and I know Ashley and your team and the Hunger Advisory Council is doing an amazing job in getting that information out. And also being able and willing to facilitate the verification process. Again, as I had indicated earlier, historically, some schools, and it's completely understandable why they would, want to make sure that they've got all their ducks in a row on a release of information. But however we can facilitate getting the verification needed to DES to validate that the student meets one of those new eligibility criteria would be extremely helpful.
Great, thank you. And actually, I think there's one additional person who had a question and had some connectivity issues, but Melva, if you are there and unmuted, please clarify on your question if you can.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, great. Well, the reason I was asking about the Federal Work Studies Award, because a student can be eligible and not be awarded. And when we award a student work study, they don't necessarily have to have a 0 estimated family contribution. So, and also if the student, did not indicate that they want work study on their FAFSA, then they wouldn't be awarded typically. But, they could still be eligible.
Mm-hmm.
So
Right.
Does a student actually have to have an award in order to meet these qualifications?
So just to clarify, so the 0 EFC and the eligibility to participate in the work study are 2 completely separate exemption reasons. So
Right.
they don't go. But what I would ask, and I'm sorry, is that Melva? Melva,
Yes.
Can you email your question? And the reason I ask is this is the first time it's come up, and there's nothing in the bill language and nothing in the federal guidance that would help clarify what you're asking. So we'll probably need to reach out to our federal partners. And if you could provide some of those scenarios that you're talking about. So if they didn't, if I heard you correctly, if they didn't indicate on their financial aid that they were even interested in it, it wouldn't show, obviously. And then there was something else there that they're determined eligible but not awarded. So if
Exactly. Yes.
yeah. you could put those examples on that email to me, and I'll get my policy support team together to do some research. And like I said, we might need to reach out to our federal partners to clarify that.
Okay, great. I'll do that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. So I know it's 5 o'clock and I'm sure a lot of you have to go, but just really want to thank Mary for your time and all of your expertise, and just a true public servant. And we're really grateful to work with you. So we'll share, I think people have asked for the slides and the recording, and we'll certainly share those and probably put them up on our website. So you'll be hearing from Alexander about that. And I didn't get a chance to talk about this, but it's in the slides. The EATS Act is the Enhanced Access to SNAP Act, and it would change, it would make all, college students eligible by changing the work requirements. So current work requirements would be fulfilled by enrollment in school. So actually, if you're all still with me, I might share that screen for you. And there's ways that you can weigh in with your representative if you're interested. So it's been sponsored by Representative Gomez in California, and we have 2 congressmen who are supportive of it already, but certainly we could use more support for that bill as it moves through Congress. And you can see there that it would change the qualifications for eligibility permanently. So that's a long-term goal. And if you're interested, there's some links there that we'll share with you where you can join our advocacy calls every other Friday, where we'll talk about this and other issues that are relevant to Arizonans struggling with hunger. So thanks, everybody. And I hope you have a good rest of your evening.
Thank you, everyone.